Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for logging on. If you haven't logged on yet, please do. This is just a tip with SAZON. If you're new to the channel, please understand just a tip is we give a quick summary. We have our guests come on, give a quick story about their lives, how they, got to this place where they're at now. And we want to give people their flowers, guys. Again, I've said this before and I'm going to keep repeating it. People that pay it forward. Sometimes someone that comes on like the set with us or to just the tip, you might be going through some of that same thing they went through. And, most of these people kept persevering and pushing forward. So, that's what we try to promote here. We're trying to promote positivity and especially to the youth. We got to take care of the youth. That's our future. So, this gentleman here has went through his trials and tribulations, and we want to give him his flowers while he's here, and people could recognize what he's done. Hey, sis, what's going on? Shout out to the sister Rosemary. Um, Gonna be abuelita soon, but bless you all. And again, I want to thank you guys for logging on. This gentleman hails from New York City, and he's got a great story to tell. We're gonna breeze through it, guys. Like I said, because it's just the tip of Sasson. But I'm gonna need you guys as the show goes forward. I'm gonna need some fire signs or some thumbs up if you want him to come on the set. We'll bring him to the set 6145 when he's available. He's a very busy man. I'm lucky to get him on tonight. But without further ado, I'm gonna bring this gentleman in, Mr. Danny Corona.
Hey, what up, Sally, man?
What's going on, brother? Thank you for coming on. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, bro.
For sure. So Danny, let's get right into it. Again, it's called Just a Tip. So we like to go and give everybody just a little sample and breeze through people's stories, so they want more and they want to invest into you. So where did it all begin? Where'd you grow up at?
I was born in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, but I grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, the LES, and I lived all my life there up until I was forced to move out.
Right.
But yeah, I'm LES born and raised. Currently living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Just kind of been around New York City and stuff.
You take that little train over the L right there. You're back and forth, Williamsburg and LES. I didn't
Yeah.
realize till I got older. I'm like, man, this is because a lot of guys played football or whatever. They would just cross the bridge and it was like 1, 2, 3. So I was like, I didn't realize how close. About 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're right over in the city from Brooklyn.
Yes, sir. There's like three train stops.
Yeah. So
But
playing ball in LES and you know, was it a big community as far as like guys in the streets playing ball, like you know, uh, this is my block versus your block. How did you grow up like over there?
So I didn't play organized baseball until I was 11 years old. All my friends played organized baseball at the Our Lady of Sorrows Church League with the Boys Club. Uh, my parents, the typical immigrant Dominican parents, they used to be like, "Tú no vas a jugar con esos tigres."
Yeah.
So we like, they didn't want me to like kind of. They saw some of those kids. They didn't want me to participate. It was like whatever. Until uh, you know, I was registered for the Boys Club of New York, the Pitt Street branch. And so there's some dudes there that I played baseball with, and we used to play street ball first, whether it was stick ball, sponge ball in the streets.
Right.
And they used to always ask me, like, "Yo, D, like, how come you ain't playing with us?" And long story short, Boys Club registration was 25 cents for the year, and my
Wow.
parents they couldn't afford baseball. So um, when they did tryouts for the team, uh, I remember Coach Pablo Figueroa, the Boys Club, Danny Ramirez, who's a scout now with the St. Louis Cardinals. Um, they were like, "Hey, we'd like for you to be on the team." It was a 15U team. I was 12, so it was what used to be Super RBI.
Okay.
And so it was my first year. I was like, "Hey, you be our 13th guy. We'd love to have you. This is how much it costs." It was $50, which is crazy cheap compared to
Right.
nowadays. But I couldn't tell my parents that at that time because I was still like 12, turning 13, and they still weren't feeling me going outside. And my parents were like way overprotective with like me and
Right.
interacting with the kids in the hood, even though I was always at the boys club. So I went and got a job at Fine Fair packing bags. It was a true story, bro. Like I packed bags for like a month and a half to make like $150, and I paid the registration myself for baseball. I remember I had like, I forget how much money I had left. I had like $65 left or something after I bought some things, and I needed cleats. I had a glove. My dad had bought me a glove, but I needed cleats to play. And this is a true story. I always say this story to my kids because I want my kids to appreciate the little things they have. But I went to the store in the LES, GNS Sporting Goods on Essex Street.
Okay.
They used to be big for boxing, but they had like baseball stuff, and so I needed these pair of cleats, and I go in there. They didn't have anything I could afford with $65. They had one pair of cleats for like $80. It was they were red cleats, and so my team was navy and orange at that time.
All right. I said, did you know your colors?
Yeah. No, I knew we were the BCNY Tigers, and so we had the Detroit Tigers kind of color
Okay.
scheme. And so the only pair of cleats that were that cheap at that point were $80. They were red, and at that same moment, I was also trying out for youth service because my boy Elvin Vargas, Charlie Vargas' younger brother, was dragging me to go play with him over there. And so I go to GNS. It was I think it was an older Jewish guy, and I was like, hey man, like I really need these pair of cleats. Would you be able to sell it to me for $64? And he was like $64. I was like, yeah, $64. And he was like, nah, man, these are 80, whatever, boom, boom. I was like, yo, please, man, like I've been working for a month and a half. This is all I got. Boom.
Right.
Long story short, he sold it to me for 64. I pulled out 65 from my pocket. He was like, how come you didn't give me 65? And I was like, dude, I need that $1 to buy a black Sharpie so I could paint these cleats black. So yeah, that was my cleat story then. I
Wow.
bought these cleats. They were red. Took a Sharpie, painted them black. Boom. They were black for about 3 weeks, and then it rained one day hard, and them just turned black and red.
You're like red and black now. Oh wow, that's cool, man. Yeah. No, so it seems like you had that work ethic that you were like, I'm gonna get this done no matter what, right? So you're a young adult and you have a child now, right? I'm
I
breezing
have 2
through. I'm kind
boys.
of skipping through things, but how old are you now?
I'm 36.
No, when you had the baby.
Oh, my oldest son Danny was born when I was 18. I was going from my junior to my senior year in high school.
Right. Okay. So you're like, I got to go to work. Like, what happens then?
So when we found out that Danny was pregnant, I was naturally, as a teenager, I was kind of afraid to kind of approach my parents about it. So, I went to my coach. The first person to find out that Janice, my wife, is pregnant, and we had a long conversation. We kind of like talked about it, prayed about it. He initiated the conversation with my parents, like, hey, Danny wants to talk to you about something, boom, 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 like, he needs help.
Right.
And, my father was supportive off the bat. My mother, she kind of was like, wow, that's cool, but, you gotta go to work now. As a
Right.
matter of fact, she was like, yo, you gotta find a new home. So, I mean, long story short, like, I ended up moving out of my house into my current wife's, my baby mom's, my wife's mom's house, so into my mother-in-law's house. And so she took me in. We raised my oldest son there for the first few years and stuff. So that's how that went about.
Right.
So, I ended up dropping out of high school, going to work. But I just didn't drop out. I got my GED immediately. And about a year later, I enrolled into college and worked and stuff like that. So I started getting my act together. But, I could tell you this much, that when I was 17, I was, I didn't have my head wasn't screwed on right. Honestly, like I was cutting class in high school. I was, a lot of that, I failed off my baseball team because I wasn't disciplined enough or focused enough to want to pass a class, not even to play on the baseball team. At that
Right.
point, I was just hanging out in the streets and, typical stuff that a lot of New York City kids are going through right
Right.
now.
Right. So now, so you realize, you know what, I got to man up now. I have this child. You go to work. I love the game, right? So what makes you get involved with youth coaching? Is it your son when he gets old enough to play, he wants to play? Is that what happens?
So honestly, I started coaching before that. I started coaching when I was about 14, 15 years old. While I was playing, I was also an assistant coach on my middle brother's baseball team.
Okay.
And so there was this guy, rest in peace. His name was Nelson. They used to call him Canoe back in the days from the LES. I'm not sure if you know him, but
Mm.
he asked me to help him just kind of do the book and run practice at the boys club because I was already working at the boys club at 14, 15 through the summer youth program. And so I started coaching then. And then when my son Danny was born, my youngest brother Mike was like 12 years old at that time, but Mike was always good at baseball. And so I was kind of coaching him up on the side. And then eventually, like, he became a really good baseball player in the city where started traveling, playing with youth service with
Right.
this program, the Elias Gauchos, which is sponsored by this guy that did really well. And so that's when I first officially started coaching. And that was in conjunction with Frankie Rodriguez. We coached in that program.
Okay.
And at that point, I was like, Danny wasn't even born yet, I think. He was, actually, no, Danny was born. Danny was like 3 or 4 already.
Okay. All right. Shouts to my guy Frank Rodriguez, man. Always shows love. Doing this thing over there, coaching at Mercy. Okay. So Danny, that's your son, Danny Jr. That's your son, the oldest.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now he is around the game with you, decides to play, right? Uh, Eventually, I'm going to skip to Dream Chasers. We're going to go back to that, right? You develop this young man. You work with your son, obviously, develop him into a talented ball player. He ends up going to Wake Forest, I believe. He recently signed to Wake Forest. Is that what I'm hearing?
He's at Wake Forest right now.
He's
Yes.
at Wake Forest. Okay. So how were you with your son? Were you disciplined? Like, how was it? Were you tough on him? Were you, always tough on him, or were you ease up sometimes? As parents, I think a lot of times there's different ways. There's no handbook, like we say, right? So I'm curious to know how'd you treat Danny Jr.
Um, there was a lot of, I'm not gonna say I was perfect, man. There was a lot of tough love. Um, but I knew he was gonna be a baseball player at 3 or 4 years old. So when I was coaching those travel teams with Frank that I just mentioned, Danny was our bat boy when he was like 3 or 4, and he'd always come and follow. He'd watch me coach. He'll watch my younger brother, you know, play shortstop, pitch. Um, you know, he grew up a diehard Met fan, just like I am and whatnot, and so he loved Jose Reyes. And he wanted to. Anytime he see Reyes on TV, he wanted to do everything that he did. But I tell you what, man, at 6 years old, when I first signed him up to play at the Our Lady of Sorrows, church league they have in the Lower East Side, they had like a opening day ceremony where they start with a mass at the church and then you walk over to the East River Park. And I never forget the day that the priest, the guy that kind of, he put a prayer on everybody and whatnot, but he said something that stuck with me that day because I was like, yeah, that's not true, bro. Like, and my son asked me. He basically said, as a kind of like, as I dropped his blessing on you, just know that the reality is that none of you guys are going to become professional baseball
Right.
players. So just do good in school. And my son was confused. He was like, dude, like, I don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
And I was like, dang, like, don't even sweat it, like, bro, like, we got this. But we
Right.
grinded, like, you know, for those that don't know, like, Danny's he's been like front and center of New York City baseball now for a few years since he was 12. So he played on Team USA. Uh, he went out to Taiwan with Team USA on the national team, won a World Cup, gold medal. He's a gold medalist. So he's been on Team USA at 12U, 14U. He was on the 15U finals trials. He was on the 16U national development program, 17U. And then he was drafted this past year a few months ago by the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Nice. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what, he's a shortstop?
He is a shortstop.
Okay. Does he switch hit or he just hits? Does
He used to switch hit. He's focused now on the left side, so he's lefty bat, right throw.
Okay. All right, good, man. We're gonna see him soon up there. Pittsburgh, he could fly through the ranks over there. Hopefully
Well,
with the
yeah.
Pirates.
He didn't sign with them. He was drafted by them,
Right.
but you know, we didn't come
Stay in school.
into a financial agreement with them, and so he'll do his 3 years at Wake, and God willing, he'd go again. We'll see.
Yeah, that's it. No doubt, no doubt. I tried out with that USA team. Well, it was a New York team. I don't know if it was a USA team, but Louis Lopez. And there's a funny story with us on when we did this episode. Also, my old coach at college, Ray Birmingham, coach USA, and he had Bregman and those guys. So there's a lot of talent. You got to be talented to play on those teams, ladies and gentlemen. So we wish Danny Jr. the best of luck. Danny, I want to pick your brain also on kids growing up in the city. Like you said, we all grew up in the city. The city could get, can swallow you whole. Boarding schools and after school, high school to boarding schools. What's your thought on those?
So I've placed a bunch of kids in boarding schools, and so I believe that if you play any sport, not just baseball, that opens opportunities, and a lot of people are misinformed or just not informed of these kind of opportunities. So when I was younger and I was at the boys club and we played baseball, they used to have this program called the Academic All-Stars, and so basically they took kids from our neighborhood. They prepped them to get their grades up. They prepped them for testing, and they brought them to different prep schools to kind of showcase for the coaches. When you go to these private schools, whether they're in New England, and down south, from out on the West Coast, they have certain demographics they need to fill, and they're mostly white kids that can afford that type of education. These schools cost anywhere between nowadays anywhere between $50,000 and $80,000 a year. And so there's ways to tap into that. One of them obviously is athletics, but there's music. There's so many different ways to tap into that. Just if you can contribute to their community and you fit a need demographically, there's financial aid, especially if your family qualifies for need-based financial aid. Those schools will help you get in there, and they'll help you turn into an Ivy League student. Again, like these schools matriculate to the best universities in the world, not just the United States, and they turn over pretty much 100% graduation rate, which for me, going to Seward Park High School was more like 40 or 50%.
Yeah, that was a tough school.
So, the boarding schools, like my older son went to the Baylor School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He went there for 4 years on a full scholarship. And I can't thank that school enough for the education they gave my son, the opportunities. A lot of kids nowadays are like, hey, how come I'm not getting the offers to these schools? I'm better than that kid. And the truth is, like, offers come based on multiple different aspects of your profile. And so the number one thing in your profile that they're going to look at as soon as they're done looking at what you can do is, what are your grades? and that becomes the most important. And so, you know, my son Danny went to this private school in Manhattan, which is another kind of like it's called the George Jackson Academy. And
Yes.
they bring inner city kids in a private school, and basically they get the funds to kind of give them an Ivy League middle school education to push them into prep schools. So him having that in his profile, and then going from 8th grade to 9th grade to the Baylor school, um, in essence, got us visits to Vanderbilt. So we literally visited Vanderbilt University before we visited Baylor as a high school. So they're both in the same
Right.
state, but we landed in Nashville. We did our Vanderbilt tour, 8th grade year, and then we drove over to Chattanooga, and that's when we had the high school tour. But the only way Tim Corbin would have saw Danny and or Scott Brown, the other coach there, is because they knew they weren't going to waste their time with a kid that was uh, not only in 8th grade, but a kid that wasn't going to be out of school with the academic rigor that would kind of graduate them to Vanderbilt, because that's an Ivy League outside of the Ivy League.
Right.
And so because of the Baylor school, or you know, a school like Poly Prep here in Brooklyn, or Avon Old Farms in Connecticut, schools like that, you know, just having them on our application in 8th grade, Danny was able to get legitimate interest and offers from Duke, Vanderbilt, Stanford, like all these big schools at such an early age.
That's I mean, as a parent, shouts to Vanderbilt, Xavier Vass, and my brother Rob Vass. His son's over there. I don't know if you know Rob Vass, but that's my guy. Working on getting him on here real soon, also. But as a parent, I mean, I feel there might be some concern, right? Like you're like, oh, my kid's going away, right? But it's like it's for the better of their future. If you really, this one of my things when I went to New Mexico. I left to Texas A&M Kingsville, and this coach promised me this, promised that. Things didn't pan out, and I just left. Instead, I didn't reach out. When I got back to New York, about a week, my coach from my previous college was like, "What happened? Oh, you should have called me. I would have got you here." And once I got that taste of New York again, I was like, I'm not going back over there. So I understand, like, to get you out of some of the best baseball I ever played was in New Mexico in college and Texas. To get out of New York, and if you're really serious about playing ball, it's not a bad idea, the boarding school route.
Right. No, the boarding school was, for us, honestly, it was a sacrifice for my wife and I. You know, sending our kid away at 13 years old wasn't easy. You know, we dropped him off, and we literally bawled in
Yeah.
tears, like from driving from Chattanooga to the Atlanta airport for like 2 hours. But you know what? It's like when we balanced out the good and the bad, there was no bad. The only thing that was a negative and was the fact that he wasn't going to be around us. And normally parents, you know, they send their kids away for college, and so we're sending him away 4 years earlier. And so that was big. But you know, the way we saw it was like, hey, look, like honestly, the longest break we're gonna go without seeing him is mid-August to the first week of October. After that, he comes home for a long weekend. Then they come home for 10 days for Thanksgiving. They come home for almost a month for Christmas, another week in February. And when they come back in February, I'm not gonna miss his high school game. So I'm flying out there like every other weekend, you know, and he's out with us all summer. So it was like, and that's exactly how it played out. It's like, you know, my son grew so much he matured so much so young that you know, now he's at Wake Forest, and you know, other kids are trying to figure out what he figured out in 9th grade at 13 years old, like living independently, you know, having to do laundry, you know, doing his
100%.
homework on his own. So
I know exactly what you're doing, and what you speak of. Have my niece and my sister in here in the room, and I was the baby of the house, so I didn't learn how to wash clothes till college. When I went on my own. So I understand where you're coming from about learning. Being a grown up. Yeah, I learned fast. Like you got to eat, you got to do this, you got to pay for this, you got to pay for that. I learned responsibility real quick in that aspect. But Thank you for sharing that story, Danny. I want to ask you about Metro Scout Day and your Dream Chasers, the Dream Chasers organization.
So I'll start with the Dream Chasers first.
Sure.
Dream Chasers is just like it was my brother's idea of getting baseball back into our neighborhood of the Lower East Side. And so when he started Dream Chasers, I was coaching at another organization, and he was like, "Hey, bro, I need your help. Come through. We're trying to do this with the LES and whatnot." And we had our differences as far as he wanted it to be like neighborhood exclusive, and I was like, "Nah, man. Like kids in New York City, like all the kids need an opportunity. It can't just be for kids from the Lower East Side. At the end of the day, like not." It's not like it used to be. Like when I played with youth service, there's a lot of LES kids playing for youth service. It was a lot of LES, Sunset Park kind of kids. Some kids from Uptown. After Manny Ramirez came in, a lot of kids from Uptown started coming. But I was like, look, man, like I know so many people now in the city that is just the right thing right now is to kind of grow it, and if we're gonna do it, we have to be inclusive of Brooklyn, Queens, even Long Island and New Jersey kids. And we have. So we've, if we include a scout team that I did a couple of years ago in 2019, then we had kids from all over the country on that team. Guys that were drafted this year, a first rounder, a couple second rounders, a third rounder. We had some guys on that team. So we've grown a little bit. We don't have the numbers that big organizations have. We've mostly stood here in the city, very small. Still less than 100 kids in our program, but we're not trying to grow at a speed where it becomes quantity over quality.
Right.
One of the things about us is you're going to get good coaching and you're going to get honest, genuine feedback. But yeah. And then the last thing about Dream Chasers is that
Danny, let me jump in real quick. Sorry about that. And
yeah.
and we had this conversation, me and you, about I spoke to you, we spoke off the air, and I said I spoke to several people about you. They've talked to me about you. They spoke to me about you, and everyone told me the same thing, that how genuine and how your organization was this and that. And I, from what speaking to them, what I understand is you building an organization where, like you said, quality over quantity, right? But you're also building an organization where parents need to understand that you want them to stay here and learn, not go because Fulano's son ain't playing and he's going to make his own team. So let's go over there and just so he could play. No, you're going to learn the game and we're going to grow through the ranks as baseball. A lot of people understand baseball is chemistry. A lot of people, everyone has talent to me, like when you play in certain levels, but chemistry goes a long way in baseball. So Danny, I'll let you get back to it.
No, absolutely, man. And that's one of the things that we constantly preach. And there is a turnover rate with parents, mostly always parents, every year. The year's done, you got to get rid of some. They're just not good for the atmosphere. One of the things that we do specifically in our program, and you can ask any coach. Yes, we have very competitive teams, but it's a result of good parents. And so we recruit good families first over good players. We get to evaluate them at a practice, at a tournament. For example, we had tryouts recently, and some kids that are trying out, they want to know if they made the team. And it's like, no, man, like the way we do tryouts is we're not just going to hit you a ground ball. I'm not going to put a stopwatch and see how fast you run. And I'm not going to give you BP. We're going to go to a tournament. You're going to play. We're going to evaluate you in game. I'm going to wait for you to make a mistake. I'm going to teach you. We're going to see how's your aptitude, how quickly you learn that, how quickly you adapt. Are you good with constructive criticism? We're going to see how your parents behave when you get benched or when you fail or when you hit a home run. Are they the loud ones? Are they the one that kind of like to, there's a lot of crazy things parents do. But so, we recruit parents first and foremost, because at the end of the day, as you would know, how many Babe Ruths you played with at 12 you who were no longer existent when they got onto the big field.
Correct.
And so, you need to have parents that are committed, because they're the ones who are responsible to bring their kids to practice. And that's the most important part, And then finally is our program is our motto. And I guess whatchamacallit,
Like
Our
saying,
mission
right,
statement is basically creating better academic opportunities through baseball. And so we do encourage all our families to consider the private school education system, because we've only seen positive results for our kids. Um, you know, a lot of these kids, it's true, a lot of these kids aren't going to be professional baseball players, but there isn't a reason that with our training, they're not playing varsity within their first 2 years in high school. And there is not a reason why, if they still love the game, they shouldn't play college baseball at any level. I have a big network, and if these guys want to continue playing, that's what we're here for. I, our goal is, and I brought this a few years ago to Metro Scout Day, and Melvin loves using this one now. But it's true, man. It's like, for our kids, it's not about D1, D2, or D3, but our mission is to get you to go to D3, where whatever school you go to, you're going to school for free.
right? If you can
Or
get
as
an
cl-
education through baseball, why not?
right, or as close to free as possible, because there's a people misunderstand how scholarships work and stuff with NCAA, and so not every kid, and most of the kids don't go to school for free.
Right.
There's other academics again come into play, and other things. So
Yeah, sure. No, I know. And it's a yearly, it's a contract basically, right? It's like a yearly thing. If you ain't performing, you ain't getting a scholarship to not perform. You
right.
ain't getting shit paid for not to perform. So, but all right, you mentioned Melvin, and let's stab into the Metro Scout Day. I know Melvin was a part of the Metro Scout Day. I'm not sure who else was a part. I know you were, but how's this helping the youth here in New York?
Yeah, so a few years back, Steve Martinez, Melvin's brother, had this idea while he was coaching at Grand Street, that basically he wanted to get more college coaches. He wanted to have a showcase for Grand Street campus, where college coaches would come and see them, and scouts. And so he had this vision, and him and Melvin went to work right away. So they brought in Mike Turo, who's the head coach at Monroe High School in the Bronx, and they had basically like a Grand Street campus, Monroe campus scout day.
Right.
And what started from that was, they had it here in Queens, I believe, in Juniper Valley Park, and probably had like 3 to 5 college coaches, 1 or 2 scouts, and just those 2 teams. And the following year, um, I happened to be watching a player at Grand Street, and this was when I first started like scouting as a bird dog for Cesar Prescott with the Yankees. And I'm talking to Melvin, and one of his biggest concerns was that he needed coaching, because he was afraid, like, his brother was about to leave to Christ the King. He just didn't have anybody like that was super committed. Everybody's busy. A lot of the alumni weren't coming back. And so I was like, Melvin, I live 5 blocks from Grand Street campus, man. Let me help you. I'll be there when I can, and something's better than nothing. And that's, that year when I started coaching at Grand Street, Melvin was like, "Hey, you want to help us with Metro Scout Day?" And I'm like, "Sure." I know a lot of scouts and college coaches just by helping other kids throughout, from New York City and stuff. And so when I came in, we changed the location from Queens to Monroe College in New Rochelle. We had a great turnout that first time. That was like the second or third Metro Scout Day, actually. But ever since that, it's been growing. Like, we had the event about a month ago, and this is the biggest it's been for uncommitted high school prospects. We had a little bit over 100 participants this year for free. I want to say we had close to 70 colleges represented.
Now, is it the
And
best of the best, or is it just like you guys invitation only? How's that
it
work?
so it's definitely invitation only,
Gotcha.
because it's a free event. And so, we're not out here looking like for the best of the best. We ask coaches, mostly scouts and college coaches, who are the guys that you want to see. Local travel coaches, local high school coaches, what's your input? You have a guy. And normally they have the one guy and they want to get another guy or two in. And it's like, all right,
Correct.
we'll get you the first guy, and then we'll come back and circle on the second and third.
Gotcha.
And just because it could get real crazy real quick, especially because it's free.
No, for
but
sure.
but we want to make sure that, again, that the quality of the ball players we bring in who deserve the opportunities to be in front of those big colleges, we want to make sure that the quality of the ball players coming in is up to that standard, because we don't want to invite and I'll use a pro grade. You know what? No, I'll use a regular grading to scale. So if we had a whole bunch of 80s, guys are going to come out. But if the showcase was 50 guys that were between 50 and 90, and the other 50 guys are 30s on a 1 through 10 scale, you know, these college coaches are going to be like, you know.
Right.
But for Wake Forest to fly up, we've had FIU and Vanderbilt come out. All the big schools in the Northeast to the Mid-Atlantic came out this year. Seton Hall, you know, Maryland, Virginia, Boston College. You know, we had all 30 major league teams come out this year.
Nice.
We had 40 pro scouts. We had teams that doubled up in scouts because we had some big prospects. I had a pre-draft event that I asked the guys, hey, we're gonna use the Metro Scout Day name for this one, but in June. And so I took it up a notch on that one. So it was just 40 guys. It was like some of the top available dudes for the draft this year. And so from that event, we had 5 guys drafted this summer.
Nice.
So we're trying to, you know, pay it forward. Honestly,
No, definitely. You definitely are. I mean, being a lifelong Met fan must have been tough for you being a Yankee scout, but but it's cool, right? The job's a job, right? Anyway, Danny, I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you want to tell parents before you sign off? And you know, if you got anything you want to plug, you know, as far as like you know, anything upcoming, any events they could, you know, kids want to get involved with, please, the floor is yours. I appreciate your time so much, and thank you again, Danny.
No, thank you, man. I mean, I'm not the dude to like plug anything. I'm just a message to parents is just like, you know, don't try to expedite your kid's success, man. Every kid is on a different timetable. Just because there's one kid on the team doing something doesn't mean that your kid has to be doing it also. You know, there's a saying that goes, I forget what the saying goes, but you know, when you put kernels in the pot, not, you know, each kernel, I guess popcorn pops at different times and stuff like that. But
Right.
you know, don't believe the hype. Just if you're in a baseball program and you have a respectable coach who you feel has good intentions and is getting the job done, don't fall into the race where, you know, I have to go to this team because of they're doing all these perfect game tournaments, or this coach is being. Forget about that. Like, if your kid is good, he's going to be seen. That's why guys like Steven and Melvin and Frankie and everybody else we just talked about, Lou Lopez, that's why we're all here, and we're glad to help any kid, and we're accessible. So, you know, don't fall in. If you need help with any of that stuff that we spoke about today, just reach out. You know, I'm pretty busy, but I'm always, you know, I'll always get back to you, even if it's 2 weeks later, because I'm busy dude.
You got
But
a lot going on, man. You got a lot going on. Yeah.
yeah,
Martinez brothers, those are my bros. My boy Lou Lopez, Frankie. You know, they've been on. My other brother JJ, John Rodriguez. I got love for all of those guys, man. You know, appreciate all you guys' time and coming and keep pushing, man. Keep paying it forward. Much success, and you know, keep rocking out, brother.
thank you. I appreciate it, man.
All right, Danny. Take care.
You too. Have a good one.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Danny Corona. Thank you guys. If you want us to bring them to the set, 6145. We got a lot of, you know, I know we didn't dive into a lot of stuff. You know, give me them thumbs up, give me the fire signs in the comment section, please. You know, that young man, like I said, the streets of New York can get a hold of you, and it's good that people make it through and keep pushing and get to that next level. Guys, I want to thank you for just being on Just the Tip with me. And don't forget, Wednesday, we on the set, 6145. I think we got to chop it up coming up this week. Shout out to my guy, Mr. A. I know he would love to have talked to Danny and dive into this young fatherhood. But again, guys, have a good one and take care. I'll see you soon.